The morning sun crept over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the quiet suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek. Birds chirped melodiously, and the gentle hum of solar panels soaking in the early sunlight filled the air. But for Alex Carter, the tranquility was shattered by a high-pitched, rage-fueled screech that jolted him awake. Alex threw on his robe and rushed outside, his heart pounding. He stopped dead in his tracks. His solar panels were gone. The entire array had been ripped straight off his roof, leaving nothing but exposed wires and a sickening sense of violation in his gut. Standing smugly in his yard was the devil herself, Linda Harper, the president of the Homeowners Association, HOA. Her arms were crossed, and an infuriating smirk was plastered across her face, as if she had just won the lottery. "You weren't in compliance, Alex," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "So, I fixed the problem." "Fixed?" Alex's blood pressure spiked so fast he could practically hear his veins popping. He stared in disbelief at the empty space where his hard-earned, state-of-the-art solar panels had been just yesterday. Panels he had installed perfectly within the HOA guidelines. Panels that had cost him thousands of dollars. And now they were gone, just like that, thanks to a woman who had the moral compass of a raccoon in a garbage bin. Alex clenched his fists, inhaling through his nose like a bull about to charge. He had to stop himself from saying something that would get him arrested. "You stole my property," he said through gritted teeth. Linda sighed dramatically, as if this entire thing was exhausting for her. "Confiscated," she corrected. "You were warned multiple times about the violation. Your solar panels were an eyesore, and frankly, the board agreed that they just didn't fit the aesthetic of our community." Alex took a step closer, but she didn't flinch. "Where are they?" "Oh, they've been repurposed," she said, waving her hand vaguely toward the HOA clubhouse. "Much better use of them, don't you think?" Alex's eye twitched. "Repurposed? My solar panels? The ones I paid for, installed, and legally owned had been ripped off my property and were now supposedly benefiting the HOA." His fists itched to strangle something, preferably an HOA rulebook or Linda. He forced himself to take a deep breath. "This is theft," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I have security footage. You had no legal right to do this." Linda's smirk faltered, but only for a second. "Oh, Alex," she cooed, tilting her head like he was a naive child. "I am the HOA, and the HOA makes the rules." Alex's fingers curled around the phone in his pocket. He had half a mind to call the cops right then and there, but something told him Linda had already covered her bases with some ridiculous fine print buried in an HOA amendment no one had read. That was her game, always had been. Finding loopholes, making people miserable, flexing her tiny amount of power like she was some kind of suburban dictator. Alex looked around. A few neighbors had gathered, whispering among themselves. He could see the flicker of concern in their eyes, but also something else, fear. No one dared to challenge Linda directly. She had made an example out of too many people. If Alex let this slide, he'd be next. Linda turned on her heel, flipping her over-bleached hair dramatically as she strutted toward her golf cart, the same one Alex had seen in his security footage hauling away his property. "Oh, and Alex," she called over her shoulder, "make sure you take down that ridiculous electric fence too. It's against code." Alex watched as she drove off, his pulse roaring in his ears. That was it. That was the moment he knew Linda had just started a war, and she had no idea that he was about to finish it. The next few hours were spent in a blind, seething rage. Alex paced his living room, replaying the footage of Linda and her HOA cronies dismantling his panels like a gang of smug raccoons. Every time he watched her smug face on the screen, his blood boiled hotter. He could go the legal route. He could file a complaint. But he knew how that would end. Linda had the HOA wrapped around her perfectly manicured little finger. The board would side with her, and he'd be left paying some ludicrous fine while she basked in her victory. No, if Alex was going to take Linda down, he had to be smart. He had to be ruthless. And he had to be a little bit evil. That's when the idea hit him. It started as a spark, then grew into something more, a fully formed, diabolically brilliant plan that made him grin for the first time all day. Linda wanted to play dirty? Fine. Let's see how she handled a little shock therapy. Alex grabbed his tools and got to work. First, he installed a brand new set of solar panels, not on his roof this time, but on his electric fence. The very fence Linda had been trying to get him to remove for months. If she thought she could steal from him without consequences, she was about to get the jolt of a lifetime. He meticulously wired the new panels into the fence, ensuring that anyone who touched it, especially someone with grabby hands and an oversized sense of entitlement, would get a harmless but humiliating shock, just enough to send a clear message. By the time the sun set, his masterpiece was complete. The fence stood tall, gleaming in the golden light, a silent guardian protecting his property from any future theft. And the best part? He knew Linda wouldn't be able to resist trying to take the panels again. Alex sat back on his porch, sipping a well-earned beer, and waited. Because he knew it was only a matter of time before Linda came back. And this time, she was going to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong homeowner. The night before the trap was set, Alex barely slept. Not because he was nervous. Oh no, he was excited. The kind of excitement that bubbles in your chest when you know you're about to witness karma in action. He had spent the entire day meticulously wiring the new solar panels into his electric fence, making sure every connection was perfect. The setup was simple but genius. The moment someone touched that fence, they would get a harmless but unforgettable zap, enough to make them think twice before laying their grubby hands on his property ever again. And knowing Linda, it was only a matter of time before she took the bait. Alex spent the next morning pretending to mind his own business. He mowed the lawn, watered the plants, even gave a friendly wave to some neighbors who were watching him with barely concealed curiosity. The HOA rumor mill had clearly been working overtime. Everyone knew about the solar panel theft, but no one dared to take Alex's side publicly. Fear of Linda's wrath kept them in check. And then, just as expected, the inevitable happened. Linda pulled up in her golf cart around noon, wearing her signature oversized sunglasses and that self-important strut that made Alex's teeth itch. Behind her, two of her loyal HOA minions, Todd and Linda, followed closely, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Alex," Linda announced dramatically, stepping out of the cart, "I warned you. And yet, here we are again. More solar panels. More violations. You never learn, do you?" Alex turned off his hose and wiped his hands on his jeans, giving her his best confused look. "Violations? I don't recall breaking any rules." She let out an exaggerated sigh, like she was dealing with a particularly slow child. "The HOA has strict policies about the aesthetic harmony of our neighborhood. And your little science project here? It's an eyesore. I gave you a chance to comply voluntarily, but since you refuse, I have no choice but to remove them again." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you mean steal them again?" Todd and Linda exchanged nervous glances, but Linda didn't flinch. She was too deep in her own delusions of power. "Confiscate," she corrected smugly. "And since you clearly don't learn your lesson, I'll be adding a fine this time. A substantial one." Alex crossed his arms. "Let me get this straight. You're planning to break onto my property again and take something that belongs to me." Linda gave a tight smile. "Alex, you really need to stop thinking of it that way. This is about community standards. And as president of the HOA, it's my responsibility to enforce them. Now, are you going to take them down yourself, or will we have to do it for you?" Alex fought the urge to grin. She had no idea she was walking straight into a trap. He shrugged, stepping aside with a gesture toward the fence. "Go ahead." Linda's smile widened. She turned to Todd and Linda. "Well, get to work." Todd hesitated. Linda, are we sure about this? Last time, people were kind of upset about." Linda snapped her fingers impatiently. "Oh, stop being dramatic, Todd. It's just solar panels. Do you want your HOA privileges revoked?" Todd swallowed hard and stepped forward, reluctantly reaching for the first panel. And then it happened. The moment his fingers brushed the frame, a crackling jolt surged through him. His entire body seized up, and with a shout of surprise, he stumbled backward, his hair standing on end like a cartoon character who had just been electrocuted. Linda, in a reflexive act of concern, reached out to steady him, and got zapped herself. She let out a yelp, flailing wildly before falling flat on her backside. Linda, standing between them, looked at both of them in complete bewilderment. What the? Before she could finish her thought, she reached for the fence herself. The zap that followed was magnificent. Linda screamed, not a little yelp, not a startled gasp, but a full-blown, horror movie-worthy scream that sent birds flying from nearby trees. Her entire body convulsed, and in her panic, she stumbled backward, tripped over a flower pot, and landed face-first in Alex's azalea bush. For a few glorious seconds, everything was silent. And then, somewhere in the distance, a snicker. A neighbor. Then another. And another. The crowd that had been cautiously watching from their porches and driveways erupted into laughter. Someone actually whistled in approval. Linda, red-faced and disheveled, scrambled to her feet, yanking leaves and petals from her hair. What just happened? She shrieked. Alex leaned casually against the fence, suppressing the biggest grin of his life. Oh, didn't I mention? I wired my solar panels to my electric fence. Got to protect my property, you know. Linda's jaw dropped. You can't do that, she sputtered. Alex shrugged. Sure I can. My fence was already there. It's completely legal. And the panels? Well, they're mine, and I'm protecting them. Todd, still recovering from his shock, muttered. I think my soul left my body. Linda sat on the ground, rubbing her arm. I can still feel my teeth vibrating. Linda, however, wasn't laughing. Her face contorted with pure, unfiltered rage. You think this is funny? She hissed. You think you've won? Alex nodded. Oh, I know I have. Her lips curled into a tight, trembling line. She turned sharply toward the small crowd of neighbors who were now wide-eyed with delight. Some were still filming the aftermath. This is a violation, she screamed. Alex has endangered the community. This is a criminal offense. I'm calling the police. Alex tilted his head, looking at the security camera mounted on his porch. Oh, please do. Let's show them the footage of you and your goons breaking onto my property, attempting to steal from me again, and getting exactly what you deserved. Linda's face paled. The crowd murmured. A few people actually cheered, and that was when Linda realized something. For the first time ever, she had lost. She stomped her foot like an angry toddler, spun on her heel, and stormed back to her golf cart. Todd and Linda, looking thoroughly traumatized, scrambled after her. The golf cart screeched away, leaving nothing behind but tire marks on the pavement and the sweet satisfaction of victory in Alex's chest. He turned back toward his house, taking a deep breath of the best air he'd ever breathed in his life. Linda had been humiliated. The HOA had been put in its place. And this was just the beginning. The fallout from Linda's electrifying humiliation was immediate. The entire neighborhood was buzzing, quite literally, about what had happened. Word spread faster than wildfire, and by the time the HOA board had their emergency meeting that evening, half the community had already seen the footage of Linda flailing in Alex's azalea bush like a raccoon caught in a trash can. The video was everywhere: social media, neighborhood group chats, even a few TikToks that had already gained thousands of views. But Linda wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. If anything, the embarrassment only fueled her vendetta. The very next morning, Alex woke up to find a formal HOA violation notice duct taped to his front door, flapping dramatically in the wind like some kind of declaration of war. Illegal electric fencing. Dangerous and non-compliant. Immediate removal required. Alex laughed so hard he nearly choked on his coffee. Illegal electric fencing? The same one that had been standing for years without a problem? The same one Linda had never cared about until it got in the way of her thievery? Oh, this was rich. He wasn't just going to ignore it. He was going to weaponize it. Alex grabbed his phone and sent a message to the entire HOA email list. Dear neighbors, in response to Linda's recent concerns about community safety, I'll be hosting a live demonstration of my fence's dangerous electric capabilities. Since she seems to believe it's an actual hazard, I invite anyone who feels at risk to come and see for themselves. I'll even provide refreshments. See you all at 5 p.m. By late afternoon, a good 30 people had gathered outside Alex's yard, all waiting for the show. Some had brought lawn chairs, a few had brought snacks. It was a full-on neighborhood event. Linda, of course, arrived in a huff, arms crossed, flanked by two other board members, one of whom looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Alex stood in front of the fence, hands in his pockets, grinning. All right, folks, let's get this settled once and for all. My so-called dangerous electric fence runs on a solar-powered, low-voltage system. It's harmless. But just in case anyone's skeptical, let's do a little test. He turned to Linda and gestured toward the fence. Since you seem so worried about it, why don't you be the first volunteer? Her nostrils flared so hard Alex thought she might spontaneously combust. I am not touching that death trap. Then let me demonstrate, Alex said, and before she could object, he reached out and placed his entire hand on the fence. Nothing. No shock. No jolt. Nothing but a mild tingle exactly as he had designed it. The crowd murmured. Some even laughed. One of the neighbors, Mike, stepped forward. Wait, so you're telling me this is what Linda called the cops over? Linda's face went beet red. That's not the point. It's the principle. It's an eyesore and a safety hazard. Mike squinted at the fence. It looks just like a normal fence to me. Another neighbor chimed in. Didn't Linda steal your solar panels? Linda froze. The energy of the crowd shifted. This wasn't just about Alex's fence anymore. This was about Linda abusing her power for the last several years. Alex folded his arms. Great question. You know, Linda never really explained why she thought it was okay to steal thousands of dollars worth of solar panels from a homeowner. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Linda panicked. It was an HOA decision. Alex raised an eyebrow. Oh, so where exactly did the HOA install my panels? Because they sure as hell aren't on my roof anymore. The board member standing beside her, a balding man named Richard, cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, that's actually something we, need to discuss. Linda whipped her head toward him so fast Alex thought her neck might snap. What? Richard hesitated, then sighed, running a hand over his face. Look, after last night's incident, some of us started looking into, some of your past financial decisions. The crowd went silent. Linda's eyes darted around, her breathing shallow. What do you mean? Richard cleared his throat. The solar panels. They weren't repurposed for the community like you claimed. They were sold. And we traced the money. He sighed again, looking genuinely disgusted. Linda, you used HOA funds for personal expenses. A spa membership. A Peloton. A $500 steakhouse bill. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, oh, hell no. Linda's face went from red to pale in an instant. That's ridiculous. I was reimbursing myself for HOA-related business. Richard cut her off. You embezzled HOA funds. We have the receipts. We're calling an emergency vote to remove you as president immediately. A roar of approval erupted from the crowd. People cheered. Some even clapped. Linda looked around in horror, realizing that her power, her entire reign of terror, was collapsing right in front of her. She opened her mouth to argue, but the crowd drowned her out. Someone shouted, "Get out, Linda." Another yelled, "Take your rules and leave." Linda whirled toward Alex, her eyes filled with pure hatred. This is your fault," she screamed. Alex gave her the biggest, most satisfied grin of his life. "No, Linda. This is karma." That was the final straw. With a wordless scream of frustration, she stormed off to her golf cart, revved the tiny engine like a NASCAR driver, and peeled out of the neighborhood. The HOA board officially voted her out within the hour. The financial scandal was bad enough, but the fact that she had shamed herself so publicly made it impossible for her to recover. By the next morning, she was gone. Alex woke up, stepped onto his porch, and took the deepest, most satisfying breath of his life. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and most importantly, Linda was no longer the HOA president. As he walked to his yard, he was greeted by Mike, who handed him a cold beer. That, he said, grinning, was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. Alex clinked his beer against his. To Linda-free living. The neighborhood erupted into cheers. And just like that, peace was restored. Alex's solar panels were returned, the HOA was restructured, and best of all, his electric fence remained standing. Because, as it turned out, everyone liked it better than Linda. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood of Willow Creek underwent a transformation. With Linda gone, the HOA became more transparent and community-focused. Alex's electric fence, once a point of contention, became a symbol of resistance against tyranny. Neighbors who had once lived in fear of Linda's whims now gathered for block parties and barbecues, celebrating their newfound freedom. Alex's story spread beyond Willow Creek, inspiring other neighborhoods to stand up against overbearing HOAs. As for Alex, he continued to innovate, finding new ways to harness solar energy and reduce his carbon footprint. His electric fence, now a neighborhood landmark, served as a reminder that sometimes a little shock therapy is all it takes to bring about change. And so, Under the warm glow of the sun, the residents of Willow Creek embraced a new era, one where community, not control, reigned supreme. The days following Linda's dramatic exit from the HOA presidency were filled with a sense of liberation in Willow Creek. The neighborhood buzzed with excitement as residents reclaimed their autonomy. Alex Carter, now a local hero, found himself at the center of it all. His electric fence, once a symbol of defiance, became a beacon of hope for those who had suffered under Linda's oppressive rule. But peace, as it often does, came with its own set of challenges. The HOA board, now led by Richard, the balding man who had exposed Linda's embezzlement, was determined to rebuild trust with the community. They held open meetings, inviting residents to voice their concerns and suggestions. Alex, though reluctant at first, found himself drawn into the process. His experience with Linda had given him a newfound sense of responsibility toward his neighbors. However, not everyone was ready to move on. Linda, though officially ousted, was not one to fade quietly into the background. From her new home on the outskirts of town, she plotted her revenge. The humiliation she had suffered at Alex's hands burned like a wildfire in her mind, and she was determined to make him pay. It started with small, seemingly harmless incidents. Alex's mailbox was vandalized, his trash cans overturned, and his lawn littered with debris. At first, he dismissed these acts as the work of bored teenagers. But when his security cameras caught a glimpse of a familiar figure lurking in the shadows, he knew better. Linda was back, and she was playing a dangerous game. Alex decided to confront her directly. One evening, he drove to her new residence, a modest house tucked away in a quiet cul-de-sac. The sight of her golf cart parked in the driveway sent a chill down his spine. He knocked on the door, his heart pounding. Linda opened the door, her expression a mix of surprise and disdain. Well, if it isn't the hero of Willow Creek," she sneered. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Alex crossed his arms, his gaze steady. "Cut the act, Linda. I know it's you. The vandalism, the trash, it stops now." Linda's lips curled into a sly smile. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Alex. But if you're having trouble with your neighbors, perhaps you should take it up with the HOA. Oh, wait, that's right. You're the one who destroyed it." Alex clenched his fists, fighting the urge to lash out. "You can't keep hiding behind your lies, Linda. The community knows the truth about you. It's over." Linda's smile faltered, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. "It's never over, Alex. You may have won the battle, but the war is far from finished." With that, she slammed the door in his face. Alex stood there for a moment, his mind racing. Linda's words echoed in his ears, a chilling reminder that she was not done with him, or Willow Creek. The tension in Willow Creek escalated as Linda's campaign of harassment continued. Anonymous letters filled with threats and accusations began appearing in mailboxes across the neighborhood. The community, once united in their victory, began to fracture under the weight of fear and suspicion. Alex knew he had to act. He couldn't let Linda's vendetta destroy everything they had fought for. With the help of Richard and a few trusted neighbors, he devised a plan to expose Linda once and for all. They set a trap. Alex announced a neighborhood meeting to discuss the recent vandalism and the anonymous letters. He made sure the invitation reached Linda, knowing her ego would compel her to attend. The night of the meeting, the community center was packed. Residents whispered nervously, their eyes darting toward the door. Alex stood at the front of the room, his heart pounding. He had no idea if Linda would show, but he had to be ready. Just as he was about to begin, the door creaked open. All eyes turned as Linda stepped inside, her presence commanding the room. She wore a smug smile, her eyes glinting with malice. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I hear there's been some trouble in our beloved neighborhood. How unfortunate." Alex stepped forward, his voice steady. "We know it's you, Linda. The vandalism, the letters, it ends tonight." Linda's smile widened. "Oh, Alex, always so quick to blame others. But where's your proof? Or are you just trying to distract everyone from your own misdeeds?" Before Alex could respond, Richard stood up, holding a stack of papers. "We have proof, Linda. Financial records, security footage, and witness testimonies. You've been manipulating this community for years, and it's time you face the consequences." The room erupted into murmurs as Richard handed the documents to Alex. Linda's smile faltered, her eyes darting around the room. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Alex stepped closer, his voice firm. "You thought you could control us, Linda, but you underestimated the power of a united community. It's over." Linda's face contorted with rage. "You think you've won? You think this is the end? I'll destroy you, Alex. I'll destroy all of you." Her outburst was met with silence. The residents of Willow Creek, once cowed by her threats, now stood tall, their resolve unshakable. Linda turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The door slammed shut behind her, and for a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the room erupted into applause. Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. The battle was finally over. In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek began to heal. The HOA, now led by Richard and a board of dedicated residents, worked tirelessly to rebuild trust and foster a sense of community. Alex, though reluctant to take on a leadership role, found himself increasingly involved in neighborhood initiatives. Linda's reign of terror was over. She disappeared from the public eye, her name becoming a cautionary tale rather than a source of fear. The residents of Willow Creek, once divided, now stood united, their bond stronger than ever. One evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, Alex stood on his porch, looking out at the peaceful streets. Mike approached, holding a cold beer. "To new beginnings," Mike said, raising his bottle. Alex clinked his beer against Mike's. "To new beginnings." As they stood there, the sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air. The neighborhood had come a long way, and though challenges still lay ahead, they faced them together. Alex took a deep breath, savoring the moment. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over Willow Creek. It was a new dawn, and the future looked brighter than ever. Years later, the story of the Solar Rebellion became a legend in Willow Creek. Alex's electric fence, now a symbol of resilience, stood as a reminder of the power of unity and the importance of standing up for what's right. The neighborhood thrived, its residents working together to create a community built on trust, respect, and mutual support. Alex, though he never sought the spotlight, became a beloved figure, his actions inspiring others to take a stand against injustice. And as for Linda, her name faded into obscurity, a footnote in the history of Willow Creek. The lessons learned from her reign of terror served as a constant reminder that no one person should ever hold power over the many. The sun rose each day over Willow Creek, casting its golden light on a community that had fought for its freedom and emerged stronger than ever. And in the hearts of its residents, the spirit of the Solar Rebellion lived on, a testament to the power of courage, determination, and the unbreakable bonds of community. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story on Store of Good Stories. If this story touched your heart or made you think, don't forget to hit like and share the video to spread this positive message to more people. And if this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the meaningful stories we share every week. Your support is the biggest motivation for Store of Good Stories to keep bringing heartfelt and valuable stories to you. See you in the next video.